Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. This month, or this past month, I would say, I ended up reading 13 books. Now, it is a little bit disturbing that only 4 of them were actually physical copies of books. The rest of them were a mix between audiobooks and ebooks, which is interesting. But now I can take those 4 books out of my TBR, which is really, really nice. Okay, I think I'm just gonna dive right in because I have a lot of thoughts on all of these books. Or most of these books. Some of these were just sort of for fun and there's not a lot of things that I want to get out of my system. But a lot of these are actually really, really great books that I enjoyed immensely. And I would like to talk a little bit about them. So, I'm gonna talk about them chronologically, how I read them. So the first book that I read this month was by Patrick Rothfuss. This is The Name of the Wind. This was interesting because it is a fantasy book, but we are following the hero before he becomes a hero. So basically we have, Quote is his name, I think that's the way that you are supposed to pronounce it. We have him when he is already a hero, but he's hiding and we don't know why he's hiding, from what he's hiding, and he's just the owner, I think, of like an inn, but he's there just not telling anyone his real name, not telling anyone who he really is, until chronicler comes along, and he's basically a story writer and he's interesting to hear his stories. So that's what we are reading. So there's some interesting stuff going on in real life while he's telling the story, and then obviously he's talking about his life since he was a child, everything that he went through. And this book is magnificent because it talks about family, but also the loss of that without spoiling it too much. It talks about poverty. It also gives a really good insight and a really good way of a really good criticism of society, of how we treat people that do not have money, how we treat people that are poor, homeless, child especially go through. And it's something really important to talk about. Maybe you look out of your window and you don't see it, but it is happening in a lot of places still. So this is really important. Then we follow him through university. There is obviously magic involved, it is fantasy. And I just have so many questions still because obviously we still don't know anything sort of about the way that people are perceiving him right now as a hero. It is really slow, it is definitely slow paced. I got into the book thinking that it was going to be action-packed, that it was going to be really fast, that everything was going to be him slaying dragons, and it is definitely not that. It's a really good book, but if you are in the hunt for something a little bit more action-packed, this is not it for you. However, it was just brilliantly done. I think the idea of having this hero and just telling the story from the very beginning and leaving all of the surprises and all of the great moments of this character at the end are really, really great. Obviously, he was a sort of child prodigy. Since the very beginning of the book, we can see that. And just following his journey, he was awfully young when he started going to university. Again, he doesn't have any money, so together, all of the stuff that he does, it is a really clever character in a lot of different ways. I do think that the second book is out, but we are still waiting on the third book. So I don't know if I want to go and jump into the second one without having the third one. But I will definitely be continuing this series. It has been a really long time since I read a really well written fantasy. And I do think that this month I had a couple of those, which was really great. So this is the first book that I read for the month. The next one, I mainly listened to it on Audible. It was Scythe by Neil Shusterman. And this book has such a cool, different concept. Basically, we're following a utopian where human race has the answer to everything we know, everything about science. We've mastered it all. We know all of the answers to everything. The way that I understood this is now, that we use the cloud to put everything there, but the cloud sort of evolves, or we make it evolve into this crazy thing called a thunderstorm, which has all of the answers. It sees everything, it controls everything, and everything is just perfect. So we are in this perfect world, but with this, obviously, we found the cure of death, so no one dies. And that is obviously a problem, and people have to die. So we have these characters called sides, which are in the world, they just exist to kill people, and they're supposed to be not extravagant, they're not supposed to basically have anything in their lives, no family, no nothing, except for the fact that they have to accomplish their work, which is a certain amount of killings that they have to commit to keep the population to become a problem. So we follow these two characters who are chosen by one of the sides to become a side. So they are training, and just one of them can become a side. The story is really compelling. The idea is phenomenal. I think I've read a lot of dystopian, but not a lot of utopian, and this was really well done. I cannot wait. I will definitely be continuing this series. The part that really amazes you when you're reading this, other than obviously the idea is fantastic, but the author really goes into making you think what would happen if everything would be perfect. There would be no purpose to do anything. Art has become absolutely obsolete, just not that interesting. There's museums for art before everything was perfect, and they talk about when people actually died from old age and all of that. So yeah, all of these concepts that you get to explore, I think, are really well done in this book. So that was the second book that I read. I totally enjoyed that. It was a really great book. The next one was another physical book, Foundation by Isaac Asimov. I really thought that it was going to be a little bit more fun and light, but it's actually really, most of it is just like political. So you have that humans have inhabited worlds throughout the whole galaxy, and you have the Galactic Empire. They live in a world, and they basically rule and control the whole galaxy. The little sciences that Isaac Asimov makes up or imagines in this galaxy are really funny. Our character Harry Seldon, he's a psychohistorian, and he basically makes these sort of equations, and they take in consideration a lot of different factors. So basically he's applying psychology into really big groups of people, and he's able to predict the way that they are going to act or what's going to happen with the galaxy and the world. And he's predicting that the Galactic Empire is going to be ending. So he makes this plan to gather a bunch of scientists and makes it so that they can go to another planet at the edge of the galaxy and start this sort of encyclopedia of everything. And he thinks that the fall of the Galactic Empire is going to have really big, awful repercussions for the entire galaxy, that there is going to be a lot of poverty, hunger, war, and that by doing this with all of the science, this encyclopedia would make things better and would make this like crisis period go on faster. Now we do find that that is not completely the idea. We follow different areas of the Foundation, which is what is called this new organization that he's made. And we follow different areas every single time that they have a really big crisis and they have to solve it. So it is really, really political. And we follow basically the leaders of the Foundation and how they respond and how they are trying to evade all of these crises to make sure that the Foundation accomplishes its goal, and so that the world or the galaxy basically doesn't go through hell. But again, if you're looking for something action-packed, this is not it. Just disclaimer, because I also thought that it was going to be like Star Wars, pew pew pew, war, da 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 da, and it's not. It's really political. So the next one that I also listened to in Audible, Where the Hell is Tesla by Rob Dirks, and this was actually funny, just absolutely hilarious, funny, really witty. We follow these two characters which are completely two normal dudes from Earth, right? And one of them finds this journal, and it's Tesla's journal, and Tesla says in this journal that he's created the door to sort of go into all the multiverse. So we follow these two characters getting into that door and then getting lost in this really long infinitive corridor with a bunch of doors that look exactly the same, which just lead to different universes. So it's of them trying to get back home and then realizing that they have to find Tesla before, so that they can get home, and then obviously things get bigger and they have to save the universe, or the multiverse basically. It is really, really funny, complete sci-fi. You don't get any real life anything. Everything is just, I feel like this book is more like a tribute to Tesla. It is really well done. It was lovely. You really get all of the love for Tesla. If you like science, you will definitely love this book. And I do think that there is a sequel, which I definitely want to read, because this book had me laughing a ton. Then I read the first two books of a series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket. So I read The Bad Beginning and The Reptile Room. And the reason why I read them is because I've always wanted to read them when I was a kid, but I couldn't get them. And then I watched the Netflix TV show that was just absolutely well done, and I just loved it. A really unique way of writing, for sure. For sure it is made for kids, but I had a really good time. And also I read them in one sitting because they're really short, they're really easy to get through, and you really, even though you know everything is gonna go bad, because obviously I already know what's going to happen. I watched the TV show, but still I really wanted to read the book, so I did. We have these three kids who are living a really great, fantastic life. They live in a mansion, and suddenly their parents die in a fire, and they lost everything, and they go through a ton of different tutors. Every single book is a different place that they are in. They just go through awful stuff, mainly because of Count Olaf, which is the villain of the story. The next thing that I read was the little novella from A Gentleman's Guide to Bison Virtue. I read that book as an audiobook a while ago, and I loved it because it was just really, really funny. I normally don't read romance, but this was so funny and witty and clever, I think. So I really enjoyed that, and I decided to read the novella, which is called The Gentleman's Guide to Getting Lucky. I mean, it was nothing super important to read. It's nothing out of the world. This book is not about any like real topic or any life-changing topic or anything like that. I just read it for fun. I listened to the audiobook again because I love the narrator. I'm pretty sure he was like young Voldemort from the Harry Potter movie. The next thing that I read that I've been wanting to read for a while was Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur. I don't know how to pronounce that. And I know a lot of people don't like these, but I actually really loved it. Okay, let's talk about the good things about it and the bad things about it. The good things about it, basically you follow through really short, I don't know if we can call them poems, but really short sort of poems of basically this girl. It talks about her sexuality from the beginning when she is basically a kid. I love the way that you see that even though she's not thinking about sex or anything like that, maybe she doesn't even comprehend what it is, because she's still a child, she's still put through this sense of being sexualized. It is just a really interesting thing to read. Again, I read this in one sitting because it is super short. You can completely go through this really quickly, and basically it's just telling the story of her from there she grows up and all of the stages of her life, with sexuality, with love, with grief that she goes through as a woman. And I think it is absolutely amazing. Now, said these, there is bad stuff as well, and things that were a little bit cringy to me. For example, everything was written in low caps, so the eyes were in low caps. Why? I don't know. And things like that. I don't know if maybe it was the Kindle edition that I was reading it in. The writing was a little bit weird. I think it is a book that we should be reading more and discussing more. I hope that I had taken some notes, but I didn't. I should probably reread it and take notes, and then maybe talk about little specific things. But yeah, it is a really interesting thing to read. And I think that really thought-provoking little book that a lot of people should be reading. Next, I read the story collection by Veronica Roth called 4. It has 4 different little novellas of Tobias 4 from the Divergent series. I read the Divergent books a really long time ago, and I loved the first one. It was one of those books that I couldn't put down, and I was thinking about it constantly in my head, and I just needed to get it out and just read it. It didn't matter if I had to sleep or if I had to do homework or anything. I just wanted to read the book. And I loved it so much. And then I read the second book and I was like, not really going where I wanted, not really enjoying it as much as the first one. And then I read the third one and I absolutely hated it, because it felt like she was trying to put all of these amazing characters that lived in this really cool dystopian, I mean, not really cool dystopian, but you know what I mean, like in a completely different world, and she was bringing them really forcefully into our world, into the real world, and I really didn't like that. It was not just the ending, it was the whole book and the whole idea of that really bothers me. But I decided to read the little novellas because I was curious, and they were honestly as good, I think, as the first book. If I read them back then, I would have absolutely loved them. I mean, I still had a really great time reading them. So again, something that I wanted to read for a really long time, and I finally decided, you know what, I have time, I'm gonna read them. That was a fun little extra guilty pleasure read that I made, along with The Gentleman's Guide to Getting Lucky, to be honest. So yeah. The next one that I read, and I found this one I think on Script, and I was just going through different Stephen King books, and I realized that there was this novella called Wendy's Bottom Box. It's a really interesting concept. Basically, it's this girl, and she's 13, 14, really young, and she's given this box with a lot of buttons, and every single one of them represents a country. Another one gives her little animal chocolates, and then there's one that she doesn't know what it does. And basically, since the very beginning, you have this feeling that these buttons, if you press them, are going to cause terrible things to that gun. This was written by Stephen King and Richard Cheesman, and it is a brilliant concept. I think I love Stephen King, one of my absolutely favorite authors since I was 9 years old. Crazy. So I'm trying to read as many books as I can from him. This is the only thing that I got to read by him this month, sadly, and it was just a short novella, but I enjoyed it immensely. It obviously gets really crazy, as Stephen King always does, and I do think that there is a sequel that I really want to read, but I think Stephen King didn't wrote that. It was just Richard who wrote it. Still, I really want to read it. I read that. The next book that I read, Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. I talked about this in my other video. I made a blog for the Bookie Trials, and this is one of the books that I read, and I talked about it there. This is just, again, Stephen King recommended this, so obviously I picked it up. I loved it. Cannot wait to read the next 2 books, because this is a trilogy. It's basically a group of scientists who are sent into this place called Area X. They are sent by a secret organization with the goal to explore and bring information, because it has a really weird ecosystem. It's just also they're the 12th expedition, and the other 11 have gone really bad. Most of them have killed themselves, and we have a really weird, creepy psychiatrist, and we read from the perspective of the biologist of the group, which is just their examples and things like that. But something happens, and she suddenly starts seeing things that the other women are not seeing. We follow her through that transition, and also uncovering some of the truths that they are not being told from this place. So really good, really intriguing. If you like biology, you would absolutely love it. It is a mixture between a thriller and a sci-fi, just really creepy, really well written, and really interesting concepts. And also I feel like I'm not gonna be able to get the answers that I'm looking for in this book, because I think that's a really big part of it, and really big idea of it is that you are always supposed to be wondering about what this is, doing all of these weird things, and just you're not sure exactly what is causing all of this or exactly what is going on. The next thing that I read was Girl Wash Your Face by Rachel Hollis. This is always, when I go into Audible, this was like right there, like in everyone's wish list, really big, recommended. So I decided to give it a go. Now this girl basically a workaholic, so she needs to work. And this is a story about her. She's extremely accomplished, really successful woman, and just it's a book of her just being real and telling people her actual situation, her actual life, a lot of stuff that she went through that is not that great, and how she got through all of that. She talks about being a mother. I am not a mother, so I think I actually skipped one of the chapters because I was not interested in that, but the rest of the book was really great, really motivating. I do have to say, and I do have to warn people, that she talks a lot about God. She's a Christian, so, which was something that if you do not believe in God, if you're not a believer, that might make you not love this book, because she attributes a lot of things and a lot of success and a lot of coping mechanisms to get through things and to get through difficult times by bringing up God and religion. So if you are not a big religious person, I don't think this will be the book for you, but if you are, definitely give it a go. Really great, really funny. I was listening to it and just laughing out loud in public, so definitely a fun book to read if you are having a bad time, and even if you're not, just to keep you going, keep you motivating, and keep your motivation really up there. The last book, the 13th, the last book that I read this March was Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. This was my very first Sanderson read, my introduction to the Cosmere world. I read this because Rachel Marie from Rachel Marie's Book Journey, I think, made with a bunch of other booktubers a book club, and every single month we're going to be reading a different book from the Cosmere world. So this was the first one. It was great. so good. Now, this is not action packed either. This is a fantasy novel, but it felt so fast. Like, it didn't feel slow paced like the other fantasy novels that I was talking about. This really felt like it was going somewhere, you know. This was actually moving forward or moving towards something, even though a lot of the times you didn't know where it was going. A lot of different surprises. You follow three main characters. You follow Serene. I'm gonna call her Serene because I love that, how that sounds. But you follow her. She's a really cool, really strong woman. and you follow her. She's a princess and she decides to get married with a prince of another place called Arelon. And I'm just gonna butcher every single name from people, places, everything. I'm so sorry. But yeah, she's the princess of Teoth, and she decides to get married because of political reasons to Roden, which is the prince of Arelon, I'm gonna call it. And she is going there to, get married and all of that, when she's told that her fiance, his husband-to-be, just died. She's obviously still has to be like married because of the contract. That's what the contract says, that if either of them would die, the marriage would still uphold. So she has to go to this place still and be the princess there. We have the king, which is not a great king, not a good king, not a good person. So we follow her through this amazing journey where she is just basically kicking ass, putting herself out there, trying to make a difference, trying to make sure that the future of this big place is not that bad. Now, Elantris is a city near this place, and it's basically a ghost city. It was once the city of basically gods, these really godlike people that had magic, and they possessed really amazing abilities. They could cure a lot of diseases, if not every single disease. They would provide food out of garbage, so no one would ever starve. It was perfect and it was beautiful, and no one knows how or why, but 10 years ago from where we're reading, these Elantris falls, and these people, the Elantrians, they are like zombies, I'm gonna say. So basically they don't have a heartbeat, they're basically dead. And it's funny because, well, it's not funny, it's weird because whenever they get injured, like if they stab their toe or something like that, the pain will stick with them forever until they go hode, which is they go basically crazy because they cannot handle the pain that they feel. Interesting stuff. There's a lot of sub stories, there's a lot of characters, really interesting ones that you follow through the book that are really great. The second main character that we follow is, I don't want to spoil it, so I'm gonna say it's a dude. It's a guy who gets thrown into Elantris because he starts looking like an Elantrian, which is basically he gets really wrinkled, his face starts getting like gray patches, his hair falls off, so he's thrown into Elantris. And we have a really great character there. He is something that you don't see often in like a hero, but he's a really great leader. He's just a kind man. He doesn't have any tragedies in his life. He is just kind and pure-hearted, and he goes into here and he starts to change things. He becomes basically the leader, and he tries to give the Elantrians who are... This city is just completely destroyed. There's no real organization. Basically, there's just little gangs that whenever someone enters will rob them from their food. Because obviously we don't have any food in Landrian, and even though they're dead, they still feel hungry. So yeah, we've also followed this other character that is trying to lead all of the Elantrians, all of these people, into giving them a like higher purpose or something to do, so that he can build up Elantris again. So that's also a really interesting journey that we're following. And then, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's definitely not. Wraithen, which is this really religious entity. The religion in here is really complex. There's a lot of different religions, and then within the religions you have different like levels of important people there. We follow this, which would be like a priest, but it's not called priest because it's a different religion, and he's trying to convert the people of Arlene, but he does it in a really awful way, and he does have a really cool journey throughout the book. So basically that's what the book is about. It is funny because you really get to love and care for these characters. They're really well made, the world is really well built and constructed, and I've heard that this book is not one of the best of Sanderson's books, so I cannot wait to dive into the world. Really intrigued because because this book was absolutely amazing and I loved it so much. I am so into this right now, so I definitely want to get started with the I think we're reading the Mistborn trilogy, starting with the Final Empire. So those were the 13 books that I read this past month, and thank you so much for watching. Tell me what you've been up to, what you've been reading. If you read any of these books, what are your thoughts on them? So yeah, I guess that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!